Hello, welcome to my early 17 lands data review for Wilds of Eldraine. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the first week of data that's come out from 17Lands.com. This is a limited draft related video, so this is data about the draft format itself, not sealed or anything else. I'm specifically talking about the Premier Draft data, so best of one, color data, card data, all kinds of stuff, top player data. I've actually learned a lot about the data and how to use it better from people in Cortical's Discord, such as like Danelius and whatnot. And I'm going to be talking today about sort of stuff that I've noticed and just to look at, just things to look over early in the format. Without further ado, we're going to start with the color data. I find this is a good place to start with the two color pairs. And this is, of course, for the average player base at the moment. We can see that as of right now, the best decks in sort of this first tier are Rakdos, Golgari, and Boros. They are currently performing the best, with Boros and Golgari basically tied at number 1, and Rakdos sort of slightly behind at number 2. And after that, it's kind of flat. Everything else is kind of at this 53 to 54% range, except for Azorius, which is very bad. Azorius has performed very poorly amongst the player base, and in my opinion, it is the worst of the color pairs. It is the least drafted, just barely. Oh no, it's not. Simic is worse in terms of draftedness. It seems that people have caught on to that color pair being bad every set now these days. Um, Similar, you're going to see similar trends with the splashes and whatnot. Golgari seems to be worse with a splash than Boros for some reason. I don't really know why. I mean, the reason these splashes are a little different than in normal sets is that they include the off-color adventure cards. And those cards make things sometimes appear like a splash when it's not really a splash. You're just playing one half of the card. But you do sometimes like the thing with those cards, and something that I've noticed in this format is you really do want to be able to cast both sides of the card. You really do want to find sneaky ways of getting treasures or like other type of fixing into your deck to be able to cast those off-color adventures, because it is really powerful and important to have like a 2-for-1 built into your card. You can see there's other stuff here. Very low sample size on the 4-color data, but it's good. Generally, what this means is that only the good players are doing this. The 3-color data is pretty in line with normal stuff. So let's look at the top users. These are the people that win more. And so it's interesting to look and see what they're doing differently than the average users in terms of play rate. Obviously, their win rate on all these is going to be higher. The best archetypes for top players currently are Rakdos, Golgari, and Boros, which are the same as for the average players. However, you can see that there are much more archetypes in the top sort of area. Is at 60%, a significant upgrade from the lower than the average players. Selesnya is a lot better, Gruul's a lot better, and Dimir is a lot better. So this leads to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 playable archetypes, which is a lot. And this tells me that the format is actually fairly healthy. There's a somewhat balanced mixture in terms of what people are playing, except for Azorius and Simic, which are sort of worse decks, but still like sort of playable. I think you can have good versions of some of these decks, maybe. I don't know. I haven't really seen it so much. Typically, if you're going to be playing Simic, as with most formats, you kind of want to be like splashing. You'll notice that the Simic splash rate is a higher win rate than not splashing, which actually does make sense. Usually that's not the case, but sometimes it is. Sultai I would think would be decent. It's okay. All that good stuff. But yeah, so the top players are making some of the more average archetypes into competitive archetypes, which at the top a lot of competitive archetypes, which I think is a sign of a good format, and a format that's interesting to draft, generally. So yeah, those are the good decks. Let's talk a little bit about format speed. Where is the format speed? There it is. So I'm gonna take away all of these, and we are finding ourselves right here. So as of right now, it's basically the same speed as Lord of the Rings, a little bit higher win rate on the play, but nothing significant. As you can see, the last 3 limited sets, that are normal and not modern playable. Even Lord of the Rings is here too. Are all in this lower, faster part of the graph. Um, this to me signals that power creep is indeed happening. Because as power creep happens, games go faster because the cards are more powerful, and so when they're more powerful, they have a higher impact on the game earlier. Basically, cheap cards are better, and as a result of cheap cards being better, people's life totals become more important. This means that things like lifelink are better. Gaining life becomes better because the game is shorter. If your goal is to extend the game, it's really important to have tools to gain life where you didn't necessarily need that before. And paying life, consequently, has become a lot worse than it used to be, especially when it comes to gaining card advantage. It's just not as worth it. And you can see it's significantly faster than the old Eldraine format. Um, yeah, so since Brothers War, things have been getting pretty fast down here. I wonder if we'll see this trend continue in future sets, or if we're gonna get another one that's the one in the winter this year is going to be a throwback sort of towards where DMU was last year, where it was really slow. I think DMU is probably about as slow of a set as we're ever going to see again. I don't really think we're going to be seeing any more sets like DMU in terms of format speed, just because it requires a lot to have that happen in that way. So let's look at some cards. Card data. So we'll start, as I often like to, with the commons. As you can see, with the full player pool, a lot of the top commons are red and black. We have Torch the Tower, Candy Grapple, Flick a Coin, Cut In, Rat Out, Hopeless Nightmare, Sweet Tooth Witch, and Ratcatcher Trainee. And then we have Hopeful Vigil is the first white card, and Hamlet Glutton is the first green card. Sort of in between Edgewell pack here. We have to go quite a ways down before we get to Into the Fate Court, which is performing as the best blue common at the moment. I actually have a lot of experience in this set with drafting all of the colors, which is rare at this point in the format. Usually at this point in the format, there's a color that I don't draft very much because it's seen as very bad or unplayable. Some people think of the blue as that in this format. I am not in that camp. I don't think blue is unplayable, especially when you're following the doctrines of the top players. Speaking of which, we're going to look at the top player commons here and see how they differ. As you can see, again, it's really just, like, there's not a whole lot of, there's some white cards, it's mostly just black and red cards, there's a couple of green cards, not really very many blue cards, until you get to the more middle of the pack here. There are some unplayable commons, Freeze in Place, Plunge into Winter. This is an interesting case study, Plunge into Winter, into the ideas of context and how cards are not strong in every format. Because the card that was basically this, but strictly worse, in the set previous, it was a blue card, and it wasn't. It was good. It was well. It wasn't like it was good. It was playable. You basically would never cut it. And this card is just not playable. It's not a playable card, and that's just because the context is different. There's no amass, so there's not as many huge creatures to be tapping down as an impact. There's more like 1/1 tokens, like rat tokens are a thing. There's just more small creatures, and things are harder to target, and tapping stuff down just isn't really very good in this format, which is why the blue-white deck misses generally. So let's look at the top users and see what their common rankings are. Number 1, still Torch the Tower. Yes, this card is the best common in the set. Red is the best color. Best common and the best color, not a surprise. Its game and hand win rate is a full percentage point higher than the next highest common, which means it is clearly separated and not especially debatable. Hopeless Nightmare comes in ahead of the other black commons. For red, this is not a huge surprise to me. Somebody who's played with the card quite a bit. It's very good. You should play with it. Obviously, like, the goal is to figure out why Hopeless Nightmare is performing so much better for top players than it is for average players. I think a lot of it is the nuance of when to cast. Like, you should always cast this card on turn 1, Basically, whenever you have the mana. Like, basically, you should be playing Hopeless Nightmare whenever you have the mana to do so, and not being worried too much about getting their last card. Because you're honestly, like, getting a card from their opening hand is almost as impactful as getting their last card. A lot of times, their last card might be a land or something that they don't really care about it. In the early turns, lands actually matter a lot more, so you're actually more likely to get a spell on turn 1 than you may, in some cases, be on, like, turn 5. So, there is that to think about with Hopeless Nightmare, and I think that's why you should basically always be playing it early, and why these type of effects always tend to do better than people think, especially people in the draft. The masses seem to think that these type of cards are not very good. You can see its alpha is significantly higher than towards the towers. Cut-in, still very high. Then we start seeing white cards. So Archon's Glory is the best performing white common for top players. This is not a surprise to me. I mean, it is a little surprising that it's doing better than Hopeful Vigil. It's not doing better than Hopeful Vigil by much, really. Its opening hand win rate is a little worse than Hopeful Vigil's, so that is something to keep an eye out for as well. Opening hand is a good way to think about cards, and is generally more important than game in hand specifically. There's a lot of discussion about this and like whether game in hand is an accurate representation of card strength. I tend to think that it is, because I'm sort of a believer in the idea that you seeing more cards is going to happen in decks of the color that the card's in, if that makes any sense. Like, it's where game in hand when it can get dicey is when you're trying to splash things, and because that's sort of where I would be a little more concerned, because I would start to be like, well, is this card actually going to fit in these colors, right? Is it going to be as good? But without debating too much about the merits of either metric, they generally are going to be somewhat closely aligned. Obviously, you'll see a card like Ice Out that is not like that. It's not a great opening hand card, but in game in hand, right, it's performing very well. So you'll see there's a much better diverse mix of cards here at the top for the top players. Still a lot of black cards. Baronauti all the way up here for black. I need to take a more deep dive on that card personally. I haven't really played with it very much. I think it is fine, but I do think you need to have fairies for it to be good. So I'll have to take a little bit of a deep dive on that, perhaps. Radout's still doing well, but yeah, she's just like a mix of black commons. But there is more diversity. There's still not very many green commons, and you'll notice that Ferocious Werefox is actually the top performing green common amongst top players. And for all the people like myself out there that kind of think Hamlet Glutton isn't that good, this is vindicating. People have been talking about Hamlet Glutton like it's this like unbelievable titan of the format. When I think the reality is that it is fine. Like, it's a fine card, but it's not special in any way. And the top players, like, there's a ceiling on the card. Right? It enters the battlefield, it gains your life. So it does. And the top players are not able to extract more value from this card than an average player is. So it's a very high floor card, but it's also a low ceiling card. I think that's something to note with Hamlet Glutton specifically, as people talk about it more. Gingerbrute performing very well, and I think the fact that Gingerbrute is a colorless card and is still performing this well does tell you a lot about its stats. The fact that its game and hand win rate is 60% and its opening, this is just a really strong card. This is a really, like, whatever Gingerbrute, like, this also a 579, it probably should be a little lower than that, just because it's colorless, it goes in any deck, right? Like, it's interesting to talk about. So those are the generic color commons. Let's talk about the white commons specifically, and we're going to go back to the average, the full averages to talk about these, because I think it's more interesting, and there's more data. Not that there's, for commons there's enough from top players at this point, but it's still nice to have a more robust data set to talk about the white commons. So we have Hopeful Vigil, Cooped Up, Archon's Glory, sort of all in this sort of tier 57 and above. And then we have a full percentage point drop off to Stockpiling and Celebrant and Besotted Knight, and then I guess there's a full 2% drop off after that to Besotted Knight. And then after this, we kind of start getting into like mediums, like medium cards. I have any of these cards impressed me? No, none of the ones down here have really been particularly impressive. Uh, this card has underperformed my expectations. The difference between it and the card in Brothers War that did this for soldiers, not having a fourth point of toughness, is actually like really significant. Like it matters a lot. In this format, I actually think it would matter a little bit less because there are a couple of 4 damage removal spells in red, and the fight spells in green probably still clean it up. So I don't know if it would matter as much in this format. I think this card probably wouldn't still be that great. But yeah, it's certainly been not so great in this particular format. Light Blades has been better than I expected. It is certainly a playable card in your slower white decks, but you obviously don't want to be trying to be aggressive with this type of card. And you really do need like things you want to bargain to play this card. There's been discussions about like bargain being free. I actually don't really think that's the case. Like I think having bargain fodder is actually a thing that you do need to consider when you're trying to play a card like this, and draft it. Return Triumphant's actually pleasantly surprised. It seems to be up there in terms of playable white commons, and I've actually liked it. I've played one copy. I've played a copy of it before, and it was solid. Listen, it was not bad. If you have a lot of 3-drops in your deck, especially good 3-drops that have ETBs and stuff like that, it is a solid playable card. And that's kind of it for white. Nothing super surprising. Hopeful Vigil really carrying the day here. And where would I say like my color white is on the color rankings? I don't know. I would say there's kind of like a grouping, right? There's red, which is the best color, and then there's everything else, which is kind of like sort of all the same. Like I think all the other colors are basically about as equally good as red. So if we look at the top users real quick, I guess we can look for the top for white commons here. Again, sort of similar stuff. There's just not as big of a drop off because top players are able to use cards that aren't as good better. That's kind of it. Alright, on to blue. So blue is interesting. Blue's best commons are Into the Fate Court, Spellstutter, Stopgap, Sleight of Hand, this thing. But you can see that after this it sort of starts to fall into below average. Commons, Ice Out, Quick Study, Aquatic Alchemist stuff. A couple of unplayables down here. They're not unplayable. I don't know. I've seen more people play this card than I've seen like good players playing this card, and I can't really figure out why. I don't see what I don't know. I don't see what's redeeming about this card. I can't really figure it out. Like it doesn't it doesn't do anything, I guess is my question. I'm very like even if we look at the top users win rates on this card, it's not good. Like they're not really winning more. Where is it? Where is it? Yeah, they're not. They're winning. They're winning like less than average when they play this card. It's 58.2, which for top players is about average, maybe slightly below average. So I don't know. I don't understand why people are playing that card, but some people see something in it. So Into the Fate Court being really good has been a little bit of a surprise for me personally, because I thought that the 1/1 really wouldn't matter, and like you wouldn't really want to like bargain it away, and like that wouldn't matter at that stage of the game. That's just not proven to have been the case. Like you do want a bargain still, even at this stage of the game where you're casting this card, and having it gives you that, and it also gives you more stuff, and like it's just a lot of like this format. It's really hard to get out of top decking mode in this format. Like once you're in top decking mode, that's where you're living there. That's where you're at, and this card allows you to sort of prevent that from happening. Like you keep drawing cards your opponent get top decks, and I found that a lot of decks do go to top decking in this format. Like it does happen more than certainly in Lord of the Rings and in recent past, where I felt like now I just gotta send this to top decking, and then we're it is what it is. Spellstutter's also been great. It is the better of the two counter spells. You should play it in any deck. It's not a fairies card. It's just a cheap blue interactive spell. Blue really does struggle to interact with the board, which is why Stopgap is decent. But blue, the thing about blue that I found about blue is that a lot of its cards really need you to have like bargain fodder. Like you just need to have bargain fodder, and there's just not really good ways to make that. So it does have some conflicts there. Quick notes on Aquatic Alchemist. I actually really like this card in blue red specifically. It's basically a blue red card. If we look at its stats in blue red, I wonder what they are. Yeah, as you can see, they're pretty average. Although blue red for bottom tier players is worse, but it is performing, I don't know, basically about the same. Blue red even. Maybe it's a little better. It's pretty significantly better actually. It's about 2 percentage points better than average. But yeah, this card I've played quite a bit and have liked it in blue red. So you don't like the adventure piece like does come up sometimes, but generally it just kind of is a 2 mana 1/3. So that you play the other game, gets in for like 10 damage, and yeah, I've liked it a decent amount. I don't like Obira's Attendance. There's been some discussion about this card being good. I don't see it. I haven't really felt it. Yeah, the trick is just too weird. It doesn't really like do anything. Like the trick doesn't act, like you think that this trick does stuff, but like it really never does what you want, which is a problem for blue. So blue is the worst color if I were to pick a worst color, because I basically wouldn't draft it without being in red or black. So if you're drafting blue, you need to be in one of those colors. But it can play totally fine with those colors. I would say it's not embarrassing by any stretch of the imagination. On to black now. Black has a lot of good commons. So remember, we're going Candy Grapple, Rat Out, Hopeless Nightmare, Sweet Tooth Witch, Minstrosity, Feed the Cauldron, Conceited Witch, Voracious Vermin, Baronati. Like all these cards are fine. I'm starting to think we're actually going to do a deep dive on Baronati like right now. So in blue black, let's just look at the Baronati stats for all of these archetypes. Here it is. Is it performing well in other decks? Not you are. White black. Baronati. It's not performing super well in white black. Black red. It's okay in black red, although black red's a better performing archetype. And yeah, so it's really is a blue black card. It really is a blue black card. Like you really don't want to be playing it outside of blue black. I just wanted to check that because if it was, I wanted to be advised of that. But yeah, so this is kind of not really actually whatever. Shadow the Oath. It's a fine removal spell. It gets really overdrafted. As you can see, I think it's the second highest Elsa card, third highest Elsa card, and that's just not where it should be, right? Its win rate doesn't correspond with that. There's a bunch of just like playable cards down here. These are not really, but there's a bunch of just cards that are sort of playable. I've played this card more than its stats would indicate that I should play it. But it is a 2-drop. It does technically do something, so there's that. Maybe I should stop playing it. Yeah, I mean, black's just got a really good package of like removal and whatnot. Black notably does not do a good job in this set of handling large creatures like it normally does. Which is why I think some people think that Hamlet Glutton's so good, is that black really can't answer it, so that's one of the colors that normally would be able to answer it, just kind of is basically like unable to. I mean, it can. It has a couple of uncommon and rare removal spells that do, but nothing in common. And black, I would say, is firmly in the mix with white, green, and for second best color. You can, it's sort of a preference thing. If you like drafting the black cards, it can be the second best color for you, and that's fine, you know. Nothing wrong with that. Red, the best color, and the data will support this. Torch the tower, flick a coin, cut in. All removal spells are the top 3 for red. Ratcatcher Trainee, Edgewall Pack, Spear Guard, just all these like really solid creatures that do value stuff. Redcap Thief. I don't love Redcap Thief this much. I think it like kinda sucks, and I kinda don't want to play it. But it's been fine. Which is a mark I do really like. Non-Crescendo performing well in the decks that do play it. I don't know. We'll get back to this one. This one is interesting. Like the fact that it's playing. We'll do another deep dive real quick, I guess. So blue-red, I think it's obviously going to be terrible. Non-Crescendo. I may not even have enough data. It does not have enough data. So many people have only played it in black-red. So in black-red, it's doing pretty well, obviously. What about white-red? It's not doing so hot in white-red. And Gruul. No one's played it. So basically the data is just all red-black data, and it appears to be fine there. So be advised. The interesting thing about red is that there's a lot of synergy cards that just kind of go in weird decks. I still have hope that this card could be decent, although it isn't. But like I wish that it were. It's kind of weird that this like I wish that this card were better. It like this when I looked at this card before the set, I thought I was like, oh, there's a chance. Like equipping for free is actually a thing, but just 2 mana for an equipment plus 2/0 is just not good enough. I wonder if they'd made it +1/+1, if that would have been. Or I wonder if they'd made it +2. Could they have done +2/+1 and it would have been good? I don't know. It might have been too good. I don't think so though. I have my doubts that it would have been too good. I don't know. They've been doing better with the equipment lately. I'm gonna give them a break on this one. Usually I'm the getting mad that they don't print good equipment guy, but they've been doing better lately, so I'm not gonna complain. But yeah, flick a coin. For those of you that are like surprised that this card's here, it still goes pretty late. It's also like 6.55. Well, all the red cards go late, which is why the color's so good. Flick a coin is just really versatile. It just does so many things, and one of the things that's most important that it does is it allows you to cast your off-color adventures easily, which means that you are getting to play more powerful cards in your deck for basically free with Flick a Coin. And there's a lot of X1s in the set, so like there's a lot of like times it's like, oh, kill your 2-drop, and then that's like 2 mana, kill your 2-drop, and then now I get to cast my spell that I wasn't able to cast before, and I'm ramping. Like it just does so many things, and that's why it's great. And you should play it in any red deck. Any red deck should play this. It's not like, oh, I won't want to play this in red-white, and we can look actually specifically in like red-white and see that its data will continue to be very strong up here, 59%. Red-green, similarly, it's going to be up here again. Yep. Red-black. Number 1 in red-black. Blue-red, obviously the deck you'd think it'd be best in. It's actually not even the best in that deck. So it's like, that's the thing about Flick a Coin, is it really just does go in any deck, and I think that's one thing people need to figure out about this format, specifically with red, is that Flick a Coin is just a card that goes in literally any red deck, and will perform well there. Alright, green. Slowly becoming my least favorite color to draft. The early hot takes about, oh, green's good, green's the best color. Not coming home to roost here. I think for me, we're headed back to another very similar feeling for green, where it's like I don't really have any reason to get into green at common. Hamlet Glutton's fine. It's a fine card. Solid card. Nothing special. I like Hollow Scavenger. I do. Leaping Ambush performing as well is interesting. There's a very low sample size on it because nobody plays it. But this is it's not that surprising, right? Like people like tricks do well. Tricks perform well on 17Lands. They just do. They are better cards than people realize, and they go very late, so there's very limited opportunity cost to putting them in your deck, which means that they tend to overperform because people are putting them in decks like it's getting drafted lower than it should, and you're not having to spend a pick on the card, which means that you're basically getting a free card in your deck. Like you're getting to take like 2 cards out of a pack, and that's kind of what these combat tricks have. Um, so yeah, they just always do well. And there's first Square Fox, Brave the Wilds, which was really good, and it's still a good card. And if you're going to be playing multiple colors, this is a good card to play. I think you should play it in 2 color decks too. Just take out lands for it, and you'll be very happy you did. Rider Fawn, Just again, all these cards are kind of like in this medium whatever range, 56% win rate, which is slightly higher than average for 17Lands users, but nothing special or anything. Return from the Wilds, there was early hope that this card was actually good. I don't really think it's great. You can play it, certainly not unplayable, but nothing I'm super interested in. Many of these cards I've played. I haven't played any of these. Please don't play Sky Beast Tracker. I did lose to a Sky Beast Tracker today. Or not today, yesterday. It was very embarrassing for me. It was an embarrassing moment. I was embarrassed. The person playing the Sky Beast Tracker was embarrassed. It was just an embarrassing time, so please try to avoid that. Yeah. That's it with green. Green does some cool stuff. I don't know. Well, the top, again, there's a very high deviation between the top users and the regular users in green, specifically with Ferocious Square Fox and Milcutton and whatnot. You notice that the Leaping Ambush stats don't improve with the top players. It's just the same. So that's, again, combat tricks do what they do, and it's very simple. But the cards are sort of similar in similar orders. Of course, the Weird Fox is doing much better for top players than for your average player for obvious reasons. But again, it's the delta there that we're interested in. So I don't think there's any multicolor. There is a couple of colorless commons, Gingerbrute chief amongst them, and Crystal Grotto and Evolving Wilds. These are all whatever. I have seen people play Candy Trail, and it's actually been fine. I'm kind of surprised that this card's been fine, but yeah, it's fine. It's filler. It's a fine filler card in decks that aren't trying to win the game super fast, that have synergies. Maybe. Prophetic Prism I've also seen be fine. Its win rate is actually higher than it normally is. We can look at, hold on. Its win rate in 1 was terrible. Where is it? Yeah, 51%. As you can see now, that format was a lot faster and whatnot. And then the last format it was in before that was HBG, I think. And here it is, back a little bit worse. This is where it's going to end up in this format. It's going to be about 54.7, I would guess, by the end of the format. The format win rates always go down over the course of time because, obviously, cards there are fewer players that don't have 17 lands playing, so 17 lands users can't win as much, basically. Better players stick around. So the Grotto is certainly worth playing in your deck. It's not killing you to play Grotto. I don't think you should play 2 of them very often. I think it's sort of unless you're doing splish splashy whatever stuff. I think if you have 1 off-color adventure, it's enough for me to play Crystal Grotto on my deck. If I don't, I probably won't play it because I really do value the color considerations. Having a colorless land in your deck is really, really bad. Really bad when you don't want it. And the Scry one is probably you could probably just always play 1. You can probably always play 1 Grotto and you're probably fine getting away with that. I don't think that's an issue. I don't really do it, but I think it's fine. I don't think you're losing any amount of equity. You might even be gaining. It might even just be right to play 1 Grotto every time. I don't know. You'd have to do a really deep dive on that to figure out whether or not it's very marginal. Basically, is what I'm saying. Which is for me why if I have any card in my deck that the Grotto casts, I put it in. Which again shows you how marginal it is, right? So it's should I just be playing it? Well, maybe I should just be playing it. That's if I'm willing to do that. Alright, let's move on to some uncommons. Obviously the best uncommon in the set, maybe the best card in the set, Imidane's Recruiter. It's close. It's certainly, if we look at just all the cards, it is top 2. No, it's not. It's top 4. But in opening hand, it's actually not so great in the opener, which does make sense. It's not really an opening hand card, but it's just an absolutely unbelievable card. Rare to see an uncommon this high. We have not seen an uncommon this high since Wingmantle Chaplain. I don't remember where Wingmantle Chaplain ended up, but Wingmantle Chaplain was pretty high. High to show brawler. Wingmantle Chaplain. But yeah, it started off very hot, and obviously did pretty much end up there. Yeah, so let's get back to the main topic here. Yeah, when you see a 3 percentage point delta between the top two uncommons, you really do have something truly transcendental in your hands, and it is really hard to overstate how good this card is. Um, it basically single-handedly won me a draft recently. Like if we go to my last draft, or not my last draft that I finished, this deck, um, this is just a blue-red deck. It doesn't have like any like creature. It doesn't have like a ton of creatures in it. This deck trophied, by the way. It doesn't have any like creatures in it, really. Like it has these grabby giants, which actually did very well. I was very impressed by these grabby giants. A couple of edgewall ends, which were great with the Imitates Recruiter because you could buy it back. If you've never bought back an Imitates Recruiter with an edgewall in, you have not lived. That is an unbelievable feeling. It really is something to behold there. And yeah, so this card in a deck that doesn't even have that many creatures, um, still performing unbelievably well. Now this deck also could cast the backside with the I had three gravity giants that flick a coin, so I could cast the backside fairly consistently. The other side, and yeah, so the card is just good in any deck. The notion that it's only good in like red white is just not a notion. It's not a thing that is something that matters. Like if we just look at all the red decks again, we're gonna do another. It's obviously gonna be best in red white. It's gonna be the best card by 5% in red white in the uncommon slot. That is unreal big gap that you don't see. Like very rarely do we see cards that are such an outlier in terms of power level within their set. There's actually another card that's like that in this set at the rare, which we just saw a little bit with the Gruff Triplets. It is another like 2 percentage points off, but it is rare to see cards that are uncommon specifically that are just this much better than everything else. In blue red, obviously, like it actually isn't even the best card in blue red. Um, Hatching Plans is better. Well, not this card's better, but it's still like some people would not play this card in blue red. Like there are people that would think that you shouldn't play this card in blue red. That the notion that that's the case is just not true. Black red obviously it's going to be insane, and red green obviously it's going to be insane. It's the best. It's the best uncommon in all red color pairs except for blue red, and even there it's like kind of close, right? So it's really just it can't overstate how busted this card is, like truly, just in so many ways. Gingerbread Hunter also there's no slouching going on here. Like this card is also great. This is a great card. This is where green really shines. Is these uncommons? These are sort of these two in particular are the two green. Like these are the reasons to get into green. Welcome to Sweet Tooth, Tough Cookie. Just like the best two drops in the set. They're just the best two drops in the set. The best two drops in the set are like always really important. They're just always good to have. Using your mana on turn 2 really important in this format. Twisted Fealty performing well in every deck, I believe. This card I think is just a good card in most decks. Like I could have played it in my blue red deck again. I don't think it's not great in blue red, because that deck is more of a controlling deck. I may not even have data in blue red. What's it called? Anyways, yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, this card's decent. It's a decent card. Which is Vanity. I mean, this card's great too. There's just a lot of strong uncommons here. The first true gold uncommon is Ash, in red white, and red white is the best deck, so that makes sense. Totentan's the second true gold card is here. Frolicking Familiar, solid card. Then Greta is your third true gold card. Cell Sword is not really a gold. Yeah, so the gold cards actually aren't performing anything, especially. We will take a look at the top users real quick, see if it's different. It's obviously going to be Imodane's Recruiter again. The Twisted Fealty, like, I think this is a card that I do need to call out, because I think it's in any deck that is pretty aggressive, like, this card's just good. Like, you should just play it. I don't think you need tons of synergy with it. It does have such a low sample size that, like, I do want to, like, be a little concerned, but the early returns are suggesting that this card truly is a card you want to be considering. Yeah, the rest of these are pretty much similar, actually, with top users and regular users. They don't get the uncommons wrong, except for Archive Dragon, Shadowed Archive Dragon. Hatching Plans as well. I should speak briefly about Hatching Plans. Hatching Plans is down here. It's performing well even for all users. You definitely need to make sure that you are enabling this card. You do not want to play this card if you can't enable it, because if you can't enable it, it's really bad. So you need to have like a bare minimum of 4 bargain effects. You really want like 6? 4, 5? 5 is fine. Like 5 is fine. 4 is like, you probably should play it with 4, but it's like, it's like a little close. It's like a little, because you have to you have to have it and you have to want to bargain it, and then it's, there's all kinds of conditionals. But yeah, it's a good card. I'm currently overrating this card. I still think this card's nuts. It's not actually nuts. This is a gut check for me. I need to stop picking this card so high. It's fine. Yeah, I mean, we can look at the colors really quickly. Princess Takes Flight, Princess Takes Flight is white's best uncommon, and this is kind of where white falls off. This is why white is not really super strong, is that it doesn't really have those marquee uncommons other than the Princess Takes Flight. This is really strong uncommon. You'll see that it's not taken. Like, this Glass Casket is really underperforming. Like, Glass Casket has been like not good, and I don't really know why. I think again it sort of speaks to that whole reason that tapping down is bad in this format. Like, Glass Casket just having restrictions doesn't make a thing. Like, I don't know. It's really having a tough format. I don't know what it is about Glass Casket, but it certainly is not a card you should be prioritizing. Okay, so we need to talk. Guys. I'm looking at you right now. We need to have a discussion about this. So this card's bad. Like, we can see that it's bad. There's no stat that tells you that this card is good. There's nothing good about this card. There's actually no redeeming qualities about this card. Nothing is redeeming up anywhere near it. Like, its also is 3.93. Oh man, dude. These kind of cards get me like riled up. Like, they get me riled up because people think there's people that are playing this format, and they think that this card is like acceptable to have in your deck, and it's like gonna be fine. Like, it's not gonna be fine. There's nothing fine about this card. There's no like secret use for this card that's like destroying people. It's just not happening. This is like a public service announcement. Stroke of Midnight is not a good card. It is not a good Magic the Gathering card to give your opponent a thing when you destroy their permanent for 3 mana. It's not good. It's never been good. It has never been good in Limited. It's never going to be good in Limited. They will never print one of these that's good. It's never going to happen. Has never happened. This one is actually even worse than most. Like, this card is worse than Minimus Containment. And Minimus Containment, I have played a Minimus Containment in my deck before. Why did I do that? Well, because like I played a Minimus Containment in the mix-up drafts. That's where I played it, because I was like, man, it's really this bad. Like, I was like, these packs really are that bad that we can actually go back into like the 2015 era Magic, where you could play like, 3 mana, remove your thing, but give you a little bit of mana and fixing. Like, that's like, this card is worse than that card. Oh, it's an instant. Well, like, I don't know. Like, it doesn't matter when you're giving your opponent a whole creature. And you know what's actually even worse about this card in this format? Is that you're giving your opponent something that they can bargain away, which is just an absolute nightmare. Like, this is actually worse than it would be in a normal format for that reason, and because there's a lot of tokens in this format, just generally because of the bargain themes. So you just have a lot of small stuff. Anyways, I can't hammer this home enough. It's terrible. Now there is the absolute wombo combo of Princess Takes Flight into Stroke of Midnight, which is not good. It's not even good, by the way. It's still not good because if you think about it like this, you have made you have paid 6 mana and 2 cards for a 1/1 to exile your opponent's creature. That is not good. That is very bad. It's like 6 mana, discard a card, exile opponent's creature. No, not a good card. So that's that is not where you want to be. Anyways, with that done, I can go on to the blue ones. Ashy Plans, Picklock Price. So these are all sort of fairly standard. There's really not a whole lot here to talk about with blue. Disdainful Stroke not playable. Really, not really at home for it. I don't know why people think this card's good. The Lords of Limited seem to think this card's good. It has been very, very embarrassing for my opponents when they've cast this. Has been like, you really just played a 4 mana 2/4 and then died immediately every single time. Like, you just lost the game. If this could target itself, it would actually be a good card, but it can't. So, be advised. Black. Black has some solid uncommons. Nothing particularly special or anything. This is actually a black-red card specifically. You really don't want to play this outside of black-red, so do be advised about that. But, so its house is probably a little high. Little bit high. This house is lower, so that's actually good. But, yeah. Ooh, Stab Wound. We're about to go off again. I'm about to go off. I'm about to... Lord forgive me for what I'm about to do to people that are playing Stab Wound in their decks. Actually, it's not as bad. It's not nearly as bad as the one that we just talked about. Because at least this one deals 2 damage to your opponent once, which is way better than not doing that. But Stab Wound just isn't... It's just not a strong card anymore. Like, the games just don't take that long. I had an opponent... Now, I did lose this game. I had an opponent put a Stab Wound on, like, my 2/3, this guy. My opponent Stab Wounded this. And that's the worst case scenario. Like, that is like, a nightmare. But, for the low price of them using a card on my 2/3 that made a 1/1 and entered the battlefield. And this is like the worst case scenario. They didn't attack me for the entire game. So the game lasted like 10-15 turns. Let's see if I can actually find the game. Because I was playing... Was it this deck? Oh no, there's no way I'm going to be able to figure this out. It was a long game. Oh no. Was it? I think it actually may have been this deck. This deck was not good. For the record, nope, not you. That deck was terrible. Where are we go? We're going on an adventure. Nope. All right. Anyways, I'm not gonna be able to find it. Unrelated. So that card basically just sat on the board, and I got to have 2 damage a turn instead of like 5 damage a turn because they weren't attacking me, and I got to be like in the game for 5 turns. It didn't really make any. So the card that was its best case scenario. It was like really bad. I don't know. Just beware. Like, it's not just a good card. It's just an okay card. You can play it in your deck, and it's not going to lose you the draft. Like, it will win you some games. It's going to lose you a lot more games than it wins you. I'm probably never going to play it. Because it just doesn't really make sense. Back for Seconds I actually did play early in the format, and I thought was nuts, and then I'm now sort of like off, just because like it does require a lot to go right for it to be good. But when it's great, it's great. Yeah, Dream Spoilers. Come on, it's not 2005 anymore. Like, relax. I actually have a deck that I just drafted that I like think this card might be okay in, but I'm not gonna play it in there, even though I think it'd be maybe okay. Because it's just not. Oh, red. We talked about red already. Sort of. Yeah, red just has a lot of good solid incomes. I like this card a lot. Hearth Elemental, one of my favorite cards in this set. I like this card quite a bit. It just does so much. In a deck that's sort of built around it a little bit, you can really just like empty your hand and get like 2 free. Like, you can just have this be like 3 mana, like draw 2, make a 4/5, and then like just a really decent card. nothing really to talk about down here. I don't know. These raid bombardment's not good. You know, all that good stuff. Green cards. We talked about these already. Yeah, nothing else really to talk about. Rail treatment's good. It's great. We talked about the multicolored ones already. Imidane's Recruiter, Gingerbread Haunter, all that good stuff. All right. So let's finish this up by talking about everything, the last of it, the rares and all that stuff. Gruff Triplets. It's your best card in the format. I have had the pleasure of playing with it a couple of times. I think I've trophied both of the decks that I had it in, so it's not bad. It's not a bad card. The fact that its opening hand win rate is 68.2 is kind of ridiculous for a 6-drop. That is high. It does tell you that green has a lot of ramp, and you should be trying to play like your Root Rider Fawns and stuff when you have this, because getting it out early is really strong. Not that it really needs any help. Very surprising, the Black Virtue being the best of the virtues. I certainly have to repent for my sins on this one. I thought there was no way that there was going to be one of these that was better than the white one, but here we are. Turns out removal's good. Life gain is good. Missed that. I don't know what about it I missed. And yeah, this was before I didn't even think this thing. Where is it? I thought this was a sorcery, and I still thought this was going to be better than the black one. So how wrong I was, you know. But yeah, no, these are both really good cards. But this format does not have super busted rares. I know there's a lot of people that for some reason think this format has busted rares. I don't know what to tell you. Like, if we look back to LTR, we'll see there are significantly more busto rares, and actually the rares were more busted in Lord of the Rings than they are here by significantly. This Gruff Triplets is about as good as Horn of Gondor, and that was like the third best rare. Like, there was Bowmasters. None of these cards is Bowmasters. So I don't want like Bowmasters. It's like, come on. Bowmasters was busted. But yeah, their cards are good. They're good cards, but none of them are like busted. They're all just like really strong, solid cards. That's it. That's all I wanted to talk about today. Just talk about some of the early 17 land stuff. If you want more in-depth looks at stuff like this, Sirkovitz is sort of the place to go. He does stuff, you know. You probably know where to find him if you found me somehow. Yeah, that's all. I'll see you.